The following video has been brought to you by RYN Studios. Release your nerd. Hello everyone, my name is the King of Clubs and welcome to another episode of List It. In this episode, I'm going to be counting down my top 10 picks for my favorite wrestlers or tag teams during the Attitude Era of pro wrestling. Now this is going to be very similar to my classic wrestlers top 10 list. That video will be linked in the annotations at the end of the video, as well as on my playlist for List It. Alright, let's go ahead and get started with the countdown here. Number 10 is Gangrel. I've always been a fan of vampires since I was a little kid, much like being a fan of pro wrestling. This was kind of a unique mix of the two. Gangrel was the vampire-themed character that was put out in the 90s during the Attitude Era. He and a couple of his minions called Edge and Christian. They were a faction called the Brood. They had a unique part of their gimmick called the Bloodbath that I always liked. I thought it was a very cool touch, especially for that time frame. What would happen is you'd hear the Brood theme song, or Gangrel's theme song, which, same thing, and the lights would go off. You'd see a couple flickers of lights here and there, but you wouldn't see hardly anything, and what would happen is whoever they were targeting, they would drag out of the ring to the side of the ring, and when the lights came on, they'd be covered in blood, obviously fake blood. As many weird things as WWE has done, I'm pretty sure they would never use actual blood for the bloodbath sequence, but they'd just be covered in it, and it would always freak people out. I think only one person that I can think of did not freak out, and that was Ken Shamrock, but that's because he's from UFC and he's used to bleeding, so it just made him angry. But yeah, Gangrel himself was pretty cool. It's kind of sad that they let him go around the end of the Attitude Era, and I think he made a couple cameos since then, but just never really picked it back up. They did have another vampire named Kevin Thorne for a little while. He didn't last very long, just I think a couple of years at most. For some reason, wrestling and vampires haven't mixed very well. Moving on now to number 9. Number 9 is the Outsiders. This is Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, a tag team that really kind of formed a unity in WCW as they started the NWO. Now, this is not a spot for the NWO faction because that's going to be on a later countdown. This is just for the tag team, the Outsiders. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were always entertaining in my opinion, just for their antics, their kind of, yeah, we're big and bad and we know it. And so they would just use that to their advantage and just mess with people. I always liked how they would refer to themselves, especially Scott Hall would refer to them as the big man and the medium-sized man. Obviously referring to Kevin Nash being the taller of the two. But they were always fun to watch, and they still make cameos. They made a spot at WrestleMania cameo for the Sting Triple H match, and it was entertaining to see the NWO again. I don't know, they were one of my favorite tag teams of all time. Just something you kind of would have to be able to see, which, good time to plug the network for WWE, but I'm not going to do more than that. But yeah, they were always entertaining. Moving on now to number 8. Number 8 is the Acolyte Protection Agency, also known as the APA. Now this was made up of Farouk and Bradshaw, who, when they originally formed, were called the Acolytes, and they were part of a faction called the Ministry of Darkness, which was ran by The Undertaker. Now, after a while, getting closer to the year 2000, they broke off and formed their own little thing called the APA. Essentially what they were is they were still the same tag team of being the Acolytes, except instead of working with the Ministry, They were now mercenaries. They were muscles for hire, and it was always cool the way they had their little setup. It was in the backstage area. They had a poker table, a door with a door frame, but no walls, and a couple filing cabinets, which if you ever actually saw them open the filing cabinets had coolers of beer, or just beer. They would just sit back there all night playing poker, drinking, waiting for someone to say, hey, you know, I need you guys to beat somebody up, or I need you to make sure I don't get beat up. And they would charge them whatever they wanted to charge them. And about half the time people would disagree with the price or would complain, which would end up with them getting beat up by the APA themselves. It was always entertaining for me. You got to see the more humorous side to the Acolytes, whereas beforehand you would see the more serious side. When they were just known as the Acolytes, you got to see a bit darker and just more straightforward. Bradshaw, to my knowledge, didn't talk very much, and when Farouk would speak, it would be usually something really morbid or biblical sounding. And then when they got to being the APA, it was more lighthearted. It was more just them drinking, having a good time, beating people up and whatnot. And that's kind of where Ron Simmons' current catchphrase of saying damn came from, because he would work that into a lot of his lines during that time frame, and then it got so funny the way he would deliver it that that's all he does now. I mean, he makes a cameo and he has to say one word and then that's it. But he is really entertaining. They're both very entertaining in their own rights. Another team that I really enjoy watching. Alright, moving on to number 7 is the New Age Outlaws, another tag team from WWE. This is made up of Road Dogg Jesse James and Badass Billy Gunn. And they later on joined DX, but originally they were just their own separate tag team. They didn't have a faction to start with, but I think, if I remember right, it was early 1998, after Shawn Michaels left for a while because he got because of the back problems that he was having. That's when the New Age Outlaws joined DX, if I remember correctly. But it was always entertaining to watch. They fit in really well with DX, with their childish antics, sophomoric antics, whatever you want to call it. The basic crude humored nature of DX fit well with them. They still on occasion will make an appearance. A rare occasion they might do a match here or there. They too were part of the Triple H Sting match at WrestleMania, being in Triple H's corner representing DX. It's funny because when they joined DX, they had already established their own little introduction. I mean, Triple H has established an introduction for DX more so after Shawn Michaels left, kind of mimicking Michael Buffer's ring introduction of "Let's get ready to rumble," only he reworded "Let's get ready to suck it," because that was the catchphrase of DX. Well, Road Dogg, being a very vocal person, always has been. He kind of took the role of what I refer to as a barker. It's the old-fashioned guy at the carnival who would be yelling and trying to get people's attention, drawing them in to see a sideshow. He kind of took that type of approach. He would use he'd obviously use a microphone instead of a megaphone, but he would call people in, start off by saying, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and he'd do his introduction based on that. And then at the end, Billy Gunn would get to say his little line of just a few words, just a little tag at the end, and it was always great, always a lot of fun. So they were really fun to watch. Another one of my favorite tag teams, especially from that era. they definitely were something to check out. All right, moving on to number 6 in the countdown is Raven. Now, Raven really got his start in ECW and then left to join WCW and formed his own faction called the Flock. Now, I got introduced to Raven when he was in WCW because at the time I wasn't very aware of ECW. It wasn't on a station that I had access to for a long time until around the end of ECW is when I finally got a chance to start watching it. Just we had very basic cable at the time. I did not know much about it, so I was uninformed. But Raven was always unique. He later on left WCW, came to WWE, and he lasted for a little while. Ultimately, he left and joined TNA. And a couple points in TNA, I liked what he was doing, but then he left. I don't know if it's just he didn't enjoy working there anymore or what, but he eventually left TNA as well, and now I think he's completely retired. I don't think he's doing anything anymore, to my knowledge. He also looks a lot older now. Based on the last interview I saw of him, he looked pretty beat up. But yeah, he was always unique. He had this whole "Quote the Raven, Nevermore" tagline that he used, catchphrase. And just when I went back and watched a lot of his ECW stuff, and I still do it occasionally on the network, he had, in my opinion, a more entertaining persona in ECW than he did in WCW or in WWE, or TNA for that matter. Either way, I liked Raven. He had this really dark persona, kind of a outcast type character. So I always liked him. Moving on now to number 5 is another ECW original, and that's Sabu. Sabu, I got introduced later on to. He is, how do I put this? I don't want to say crazy, because that sounds too generic for Sabu. He's definitely out there. He is way, way different. He is not someone that, not someone I would want to mess with. People get hurt a lot with dealing with Sabu because he doesn't wrestle as much as he creates complete anarchy and chaos. And I think that's part of the draw. Actually, I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people liked him, why I was entertained by him, is that every match that he was involved in, something was going to get broke. Usually a table, a chair, it could be a variety of things. And he didn't seem to care if he got hurt in the process. In fact, most of his body now is scar tissue because he's been tore up in so many ridiculous and extreme matches. He's had barbed wire ripped through his body. He's been put through tables. He's been hit with chairs. He's been hit with just about everything you can think of. And he's inflicted almost as much damage back onto his opponents with the same methods. One of the things I remember most about Sabu is his chair throwing. I always thought it was cool, and I understand wrestling is choreographed and scripted and whatnot. It takes very precise throwing of a steel chair to do what he does. He manages to throw it at just the right kind of straightforward angle to where the chair doesn't turn and actually hit the guy with, like the corner or the headpiece or anything like that. And he hits him flush with the flat surface of the seat of the chair. That takes a lot of precise aiming, in my opinion, because I know I couldn't do that. But if I tried to throw a chair at somebody, it would turn, it would flip, and I'd probably seriously hurt someone. So he could do it, and it always looked so painful when he would do it to people. And I imagine it probably did hurt. I mean, even if it's choreographed, even if you know what's going to happen, it's probably not going to feel good to have someone like Sabu throw something at you. In fact, his tactics were so extreme that if few times, at least once in his career, he got banned from wrestling in the United States. So he went to Japan and Mexico and all over the world, everywhere but the United States, to wrestle. Yeah, he was always extreme. Definitely fit in with ECW. He was part of the new ECW as well whenever WWE rebranded it. That was, in my opinion, a very watered down version of ECW. But I liked that they tried to make things different, tried to bring something back. I'll give the WWE an A for effort in that respect. Apologize for any of the loud background noise. Sitting fairly close to the road here. I'm actually house sitting. But anyway, getting back to the countdown. Yeah, Sabu was always fun to watch. Very extreme. Number 4 is Rob Van Dam. Another ECW original, another very extreme wrestler is Rob Van Dam. He always impressed me with how flexible he is and how agile he is. He's not a very big guy, but he's just so impressive. Unfortunately, his finishing move, the frog splash, even though it's choreographed and scripted, he has hurt his ribs so many times over the years that it actually hurts him to perform the 5-star frog splash. It actually has been for quite some time. I will say to his credit, though, he has a very unique setup with the WWE now. He has it to where every once in a while, whenever he's ready to perform for them, he'll sign a short-term contract, anywhere from 3 weeks to just a couple months. He'll wrestle whatever schedule they pick out for him, and then he'll take a break. Then he'll do another small contract, take a break. So he's not under a long-term contract with them, to my knowledge. In fact, I think right now is during one of his off periods. I don't think he's currently wrestling anywhere at this point in time. But he's also getting up there in age, and with the wear and tear that your body takes doing something physical like this, especially when you start with ECW, which is a lot rougher than what WWE practices, your body takes it takes a toll on your body. It really does. And so I would imagine that his body is probably hurting a lot of the time now. Yeah, he was always entertaining, very flashy, very good on the microphone. That was one thing. Some wrestlers like Sabu, who hardly ever spoke, Rob Van Dam was very talkative. He had no problem speaking, and at times he'd even cut off Sabu during interviews or speak for him. So yeah, Rob Van Dam was always fun to watch. All right, moving on to number 3 is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Probably one of the most recognizable wrestlers of all time is Stone Cold Steve Austin. He has been considered probably the most popular wrestler to ever come out of WWE, in some cases even foreshadowing Hulk Hogan. Austin has done movies, he's done TV shows, he's done a lot of things after his career ended. He still makes cameo appearances, but right now he's focusing mostly on his podcast that he does. He is still one of the most entertaining wrestlers I've ever seen. He could take a single word and turn it into a catchphrase. In fact, he did just that around the end of Attitude Era and then early 2000s. He basically took the word "what" and turned it into a catchphrase. So that kind of gives you an idea of how entertaining he is. And even now to this day, people still yell "what." Like when other wrestlers are doing their promos or doing a rant or something like that, they'll pause for a moment, usually to catch their breath or to just to kind of pace themselves, and the audience will usually take that opportunity to yell "what," even to this day, which I think is cool. That's really a strong sign of how much Stone Cold has affected pro wrestling, because they do that in WWE, and even in TNA and in some of the indie leagues, you still hear people yell "what." It's more pronounced in WWE, though. Alright, moving on to number 2 is The Rock. If you don't know who The Rock is, then you, 1, don't know anything about pro wrestling, and 2, have not seen a movie in a very long time, because The Rock is in a ton of movies nowadays. He did really well in the WWE, and towards the end of the Attitude Era, he decided that he wanted to start getting into movies. So he did some movies at the early 2000s and started thinking, oh, if I can make it in Hollywood, I can kind of bridge the gap between Hollywood and wrestling. Because at the time, the idea of a pro wrestler going into movies had only happened with Hulk Hogan. And then maybe once with Shawn Michaels and once with Stone Cold Steve Austin. It really was not, it was pretty uncharted territory. And honestly, Hulk Hogan's involvement, a lot of people weren't pleased with. Mainly because Hulk Hogan is a great pro wrestler, but his acting ability is not that great, in my opinion. But The Rock, great actor, great singer. The Rock has a lot of talent. He is a very, very talented individual, and I think that's what people tend to forget, is that he is so talented. But yeah, he is doing a lot of moves right now. He's got one coming out soon called San Andreas, and I'm actually eager to see that one because it looks really cool for a kind of a. It has the kind of the post or the kind of the end of the world vibe, not really post-apocalyptic, but the actual end of the world vibe type of thing going on, and just the way they present it seems like something that I might actually want to go see. But yeah, always entertaining. Called the most electrifying man in all of sports and entertainment, and with good reason, because he is simply electrifying. Alright, moving on to our number 1 spot, my personal favorite wrestler in the Attitude Era is Shawn Michaels. I've been a Shawn Michaels fan for a long time. Attitude Era is really his time to shine. In fact, when he won the title in 1996, that was kind of the beginning of the Attitude Era. Attitude Era really started around mid-96, and he was the champion. A lot of things were taking a new direction, and he was the kind of the flag bearer for that. He helped form the original D-Generation X, and that definitely is what promoted the new attitude of the Attitude Era. He's always goofy, always just so much fun to watch. I mean, anytime I see him, I'm always smiling or laughing, usually both. Usually I'm laughing a lot because he is goofy, and there are times I don't think he means to be. I think it's just who he is, just his personality comes through so well. And that's the cool thing about him, is that after so long he got to a point where he didn't have to try to be a good guy or a bad guy. He just got to be himself and have fun. And if it meant that he had to be a little bit darker, that was fine. He could do it and still be himself. If he had to be, you know, the kind of the white knight, he could do that but still be himself. And it wasn't really like, you know, playing a character, playing a role. He was just having fun doing his own thing. Still makes appearances every once in a while. Made an appearance during the Sting Triple H match at WrestleMania as part of DX. He's always so much fun to watch. And it's funny because in the past he would have this, you know, this energetic entrance that he would do whenever he was wrestling, and then after he retired a few years ago, he'd only make cameos every once in a while, and he'd still do his entrance, but whenever he'd get down to the ring, he would seem so out of breath, which is kind of the gag, is him just not being able to do it anymore because he's not doing it night after night. But it's always fun to watch, always entertaining. But yeah, Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler out of the Attitude Era. Now, let me know what you guys think, because this has been a long countdown. I do apologize, this video has run a lot longer than most of my other ones have. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think, who you think should have been on the list, who your favorite wrestler from the Attitude Era was. Now, remind you, this is 1996 to 2001 Attitude Era. Okay, guys, make sure you like the video hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Favorite, share the video, get other people involved in the discussion. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos, and check the annotations for other videos I've done as well. Also, check me out on social media. I've got Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and Snapchat. All those are in the description below. And yeah, you guys have a nice day.